The Book of Nymphs, Sylphs, Pygmies, and Salamanders by Paracelsus. Prologue. We are familiar and well acquainted with the creation of all and every natural object that God has brought into existence. Every country has cognizance of its own, of what occurs and grows in it. Every man has cognizance of himself. Thus also an art and a craft have knowledge of their subjects. In such a way, cognizance is obtained of all creations that God has brought into existence, and nothing is concealed that man did not or would not know. That does not mean that all knowledge is in one, namely, that one man knew all this, but each one his field. When they all come together, then everything is known. It does not mean either that every country has knowledge of every other country, but each of its own. And when they are all taken together, then all is known. And every city, village, house, etc., has its own cognizance of all natural objects. And in the arts and crafts, all created objects are being used, one in this, one in that. And while they are all being used, we come to understand for what purpose they have been created. And the final conclusion is that everything is subservient and subject to man. There are more things, however, than those which are comprehended and recognized in the light of nature, things which are above and superior to it. But these cannot be understood against the light of nature, that is, in the light of nature, but in the light of man, which is above the light of nature. They may be understood, for nature emits a light by which it may be perceived from its own radiance. But in man there is also a light, outside the light born in nature. This is the light by which man hears, learns, and penetrates supernatural things. Those who search in the light of nature talk of nature. Those who search in the light of man talk of more than nature. For man is more than nature. He is nature. He is also a spirit. He is also an angel. He has the qualities of all these three. When he walks in nature, he serves nature. When he walks in the spirit, he serves the spirit. When he walks in the angel, he serves as an angel. The first is given the body. The others are given the soul and are its treasure. Since man has a soul and the other two, he elevates himself above nature to explore also that which is not in nature, especially to learn about and explore hell, the devil and his realm. In the same way, man also explores the heaven and its essence, namely God and his realm. For he who must go to a place should know the character of the place in advance. Then he will be able to travel wherever he pleases. Know, therefore, that the purpose of this book is to describe the treasures that are outside the cognizance of the light of nature, how they are to be understood, what marvelous works God has created. For it is man's function to learn about things and not to be blind about them. He has been equipped to talk about the marvelous works of God and to present them. It is possible for men to explore the essence and qualities of every single work that God has created. For nothing has been created that man could not explore, and it has been created so that men may not be idle, but walk in the path of God, that is, in his works, not in vice, not in fornication, not in gambling, not in drinking, not in plundering, not in acquisition of goods, nor in acquisition of riches for the worms, but to apply his spirit, his light, his angelic kind to the contemplation of divine objects. There is more bliss in describing the nymphs than in describing medals. There is more bliss in describing the origin of the giants than in describing court etiquettes. There is more bliss in describing Melusine than in describing cavalry and artillery. There is more bliss in describing the mountain people on the ground than in describing fencing and service to ladies. For in these things the Spirit is used to move in divine works, while in the other things the Spirit is used to seek the world's manner and applause in vanity and dishonesty. He who experiences and hears much on earth will also be learned in the resurrection, while he who knows nothing will be inferior. For there are many mansions of God's house, and each one will find his mansion according to his learning. We are all learned, but not equally, all wise, but not equally, all skillful, but not equally. He who searches deeply is most. For research and seeking experience thrive in God and avoid the devices of the world. They flee worldly service, obedience to princes, court manners, nice gestures. They learn tongues in which are also lies and curses. But God's miraculous works, man's light learns them and does not ask tongues for it. Obedience to God, this is man's command. Obedience to men, what else is in that than a vain shadow? Man does not pay for obedience, has no reward for it. He dies, and when he is dead, he is dirt. What does man make of himself? He must learn more than obedience, and let obedience be, and love his neighbor. Then obedience will come out by itself, as the flower and fruit come out of a good tree. Oh, how joyful is he who thinks in the following of his Creator. He finds pearls that will not be thrown to the swine. But he who thinks in the following of men searches for pearls, like a sow which stirs up everything and does not find anything of use. And so, know how to understand the beginning of this book. I am not writing about lovely matters and nice stories, but about supernatural matters that do not require nice stories, but let gossip be what it is. Chapter 1. To begin with, it is only fair that I explain the subject about which I write hereafter. What is it all about? Know, therefore, that the purpose of this book is to describe the 4 kinds of spirit men, namely the water people, the mountain people, the fire people, and the wind people. Included among these 4 kinds are the giants, the Melusines, the Venusberg, and what is similar to them. We consider them to be men, although not from Adam, but other creatures, apart from man, and all other animals, in spite of the fact that they come among us and children are born from them. although not of their own kind, but of our kind. How things are in relation to us will have to be described in the following order. First, their creation and what they are. Second, their country and habitation, where they stay and what their mode of living is. Third, how they come to us and let themselves be seen, how they mix and have intercourse with us. Fourth, how they perform some miraculous works such as Melusine and Venusberg and similar stories. Fifth, the birth of the giants and their origin, and also their vanishing and return. It is true that a philosopher must build on the Holy Scriptures and take his argument from them. But in the Scriptures, nothing special is written about these things, what to make of them, or how to explore them. There are some remarks about the giants only. Although these things are treated outside the Scriptures, their exploration is justified by the fact that they appear and exist. These things must be explored just like magic, if we're to believe in it, and we do, and wish to ascertain its origin. The writers of the Bible and the New Testament discussed how the soul has to act toward God and God toward the soul, so that this philosophy may not fall back. But if we are permitted knowledge about the devil and about the spirits and similar subjects, then this is something that has to be explored also in regard to its nature. We have the power to travel in all the works of God, the physician in the natural remedy, the apostle in the apostolic remedy. For as a sick man calls for a physician, things call for a philosopher, and a Christian call for the Redeemer, and every work for his master. Such creatures are also necessary and also represent their condition, and they have not been created in vain. For Samson was a man. Now he had strength over all men, which was not natural nor credible, and it is resided in his hair. This is considered by men as superfluous and unnecessary, but as it has its reason why it must exist. David, who was a small man, killed the giant Goliath. It had to be, and yet did not seem humanly possible. Hence, nothing has been created that has not a mystery, and it may be a great one. In the Old Testament, queer stories happen which nobody can interpret, and then the New Testament teaches him about them, how things are finally found in a given place. May they occurred from what cause? Thus one learns that they occurred indeed. The same applies to the things about which I write in the following. People find them unnecessary and find that it is useless to talk about them. But since there is a reason for them which will be apparent, about which I shall write the 6th treatise, therefore it is not unnecessary but necessary to explore these things and to include them in our philosophy and speculation, to contemplate these things together with others, what their final purpose is. Part 2 of Chapter 1. The flesh must be understood thus, that there are two, the flesh from Adam and that which is not from Adam. The flesh from Adam is a coarse flesh, for it is earthen and is nothing else but a flesh that can be bound and grasped like wood or a stone. The other flesh, which is not from Adam, is a subtle flesh, and cannot be bound or grasped, for it is not made from earth. Now the flesh from Adam is the man from Adam. He is coarse like the earth, which is compact, and therefore man cannot go through a wall. He must make a hole to slip through, because nothing recedes before him. But before the flesh that is not from Adam, walls recede, which means that such flesh does not require doors nor holes. It goes through intact walls and does not break anything. They are both flesh, blood, bone, and so on. Whatever belongs to a man, and in their whole nature they are like man's. But they are different in that they have a double origin, like two cousins. They are in equal way like a spirit and like men. The spirit goes through all walls, and nothing locks him out. Man, however, not, for he is locked out by the bolt or the lock. Just as you can distinguish and differentiate between a spirit and a man, so you shall recognize the people about whom I am writing, but with the difference that they are separated from the spirits by having blood and flesh and bones. With all this, they bear children, talk and eat, drink and walk, things that spirits do not. Hence, they are like the spirits in speed, like men in gestures, figure, and eating. And so there are people who have the character of spirits and also that of men, and both are one in them. Although they are both spirit and men, yet they are neither one nor the other. They cannot be men, since they are spirit-like in their behavior. They cannot be spirits, since they eat and drink, have blood and flesh. Therefore, they are creation of their own, outside the two, but of the kind of both, a mixture of both, like a composite remedy of two substances, which is sour and sweet, and yet does not seem it, or two colors mixed together, which become one, and yet are two. It must be understood further that although they are spirit and man, yet they are neither. Man has a soul, the spirit not. The spirit has no soul, but man has one. This creature, however, is both, but has no soul, and yet it is not identical with the spirit, for the spirit does not die, but the creature dies, and so it is not like man. It has not the soul. It is a beast, yet higher than a beast. It dies like a beast, and the animal body has no soul either, only man. That is why it is a beast. But they talk, laugh like men. This is why they're more like men than like beasts, but they're neither man nor beast. They are to men like a monkey, which is the animal resembling man most in gestures and actions, and as a pig has man's anatomy, being inside like man, yet a pig and not a man. In the same way, these creatures are to men as monkeys and pigs, and yet better than they. For they are in everything like men, but without soul, and better than men, for they are like the spirits which nobody can lift. Christ died and was born for those who have a soul, that is, who are from Adam, and not for those who are not from Adam, for they are men, but have no soul. So much can be gathered from the scriptures about them that they must be admitted to be men. But as far as the soul is concerned, there is no knowledge of their having one. Nobody should wonder that there are such creatures, for God is miraculous in his works, which he often lets appear miraculously. For these things are not daily before our eyes, but very rarely, and we see them only in order that we may know of their existence, for they exist, and yet appear to us as in a dream. The great wisdom of God cannot be fathomed, nor can his great miraculous works be understood, nor more than is needed to recognize our Creator in his miraculous deeds. Now, they are separated from us because they are not from Adam and do not participate in the same earth from which Adam was made. But God has decreed that we may see them miraculously, which has a particular meaning, as will be discussed in the last treatise. They have children, and their children are their kind, not ours. They are witty, rich, clever, poor, dumb, like we are, who are from Adam. They resemble us in every way, just as one says, man is the image of God, that is, he has been made after his image. In the same way, one can also say, these people are the image of man and made after his image. Now, man is not God, although he is made like him, but only as an image. The same here. They are not men because they are made after his image, but remain the same creatures as they have been created, just as man remains the same as God has created him. Thus he wants every creature to remain at the place where it has been created. And as man cannot boast that he is God, but a creation of God, thus made by God, and God wants it thus, in the same way, these people cannot boast that they have a soul like man, although they look like him. Just as man cannot boast that he is God, although he is made after him and exists, thus man lacks that he is not God, and the wild people lack the soul. Therefore, they cannot say that they are men, and so the one lacks God, the other the soul. Thus God alone is God, and man alone is man. And so they are men and people, die with the beasts, walk with the spirits, eat and drink with men. That is, like the beasts they die, so that nothing is left, and neither water nor fire harms them, like the spirits, and nobody can lock them up, like the spirits, but they reproduce like men, and therewith share his nature. They have man's diseases and his health, but their medicine is not from the earth from which man is made, but from the element in which they live. They die like men, but are dead like the beasts. Their flesh rots like other flesh, and their bones like other men's bones, and nothing remains of it. Their customs and behavior are human, as is their way of talking, without virtues, better and coarse, more subtle and rougher. The same applies to their figures. They are very different, like men. In food, they are like men, eat and enjoy the product of their labor, spin and weave their own clothing. They know how to make use of things, have wisdom to govern, justice to preserve and protect. For although they are beasts, they have all the reason of men, except the soul. Therefore, they have not the judgment to serve God, to walk in his path, for they have not the soul. The beast, from inborn nature, seeks a just course toward itself, and so do they. But they have the highest reason above all other animals, just as man, above all creatures, is closest to God on earth in intelligence and faculties. So they are, among all animals, closest to men, and so close that they are called people and men, and are held and taken for such, so that there is no difference except in their spirit-like way and in the lack of soul. A queer and marvelous creature to be considered above all others. Chapter 2. About their abode. Their abode is of four kinds, namely, according to the four elements: one in the water, one in the air, one in the earth, one in the fire. Those in the water are nymphs, those in the air are sylphs, those in the earth are pygmies, those in the fire salamanders. These are not good names, but I use them nevertheless. The names were given to them by people who did not understand them. Since they designate the things, and since they can be recognized by the names, I shall leave it at that. The name of the water people is also Undina, and of the air people Sylvestres, and of the mountain people Nomi, and of the fire people Vulcani, rather than Salamandri. Whatever it may be, and however the differentiation may be understood, let it stay. Now you must know that if their regions have to be described, they must be divided into their parts. For the water people have no intercourse with the mountain people, nor the mountain people with them, nor the salamanders. Each has his special abode, but they appear to men as mentioned, so that he may recognize and see how marvelous God is in his works, that he does not leave any element void and empty without having great wonders in them. And now follow four regions which explain the difference of abode, also of person, essence and kind, how far they differ from each, yet more similar to men than to each other, and yet all men, as was explained in the first treatise. You know that there are four elements: air, water, earth, and fire. And you also know that we men from Adam stand and walk in air, and are surrounded by it as a fish by water, and we can just as little be without it as a fish without water. As the fish has its abode in water, where water takes for it the place of the air in which it lives, So air takes for men the place of water in relation to the fish. Thus, everything has been created in its element to walk therein. From this example, you understand that the undines have their abode in water, and the water is given to them as to us the air. And just as we are astonished that they should live in water, they are astonished about our being in the air. The same applies to the gnomes in the mountains. The earth is their air and is their chaos, for everything lives in chaos. That is, everything has its abode in chaos, walks and stands therein. Now the earth is not more than mere chaos to the mountain mannikins, for they walk through solid walls, through rocks and stones like a spirit. This is why these things are all mere chaos to them. That is nothing. That amounts to as little as we are hampered by the air, as little as they are hampered by the mountain, by earth and rocks. And as it is easy for us to walk through the air, and air cannot stop us, so rocks and cliffs are easy to them. And so things are all chaos to them, which are not chaos to us. For a wall, a partition, stops us so that we cannot go through, but to them it is a chaos. That is why they walk through it. To them it is their air in which they live and walk, as man does in the air that is between heaven and earth. And the coarser the chaos, the more subtle is the creature, and the more subtle the chaos, the coarser the creature. The mountain people have a coarse chaos, therefore they must be more subtle, and man has a subtle chaos, therefore he is all the coarser. And thus there are different kinds of chaos, and the inhabitants are adapted in nature and quality to live in them. Thus one wonder is explained, that of their abode, and you know that their habitation in the four elements is their chaos, just as the air is for us, and there cannot be such accidents to them as drowning or suffocating or burning, for the elements are nothing but air to the creatures who live in them. Since water is the fish's air, and fish does not drown, so the undines do not drown either. As in the water, so in the earth is air to the gnomes, since they do not suffocate. They do not require our air, we do not theirs. Thus also with the salamanders. Fire is their air, as our air to us. And the sylvesters are closer to us, for they too maintain themselves in our air, and they are exposed to the same kind of death as we, namely, they burn in fire, and we too. They drown in water, and we too. They suffocate in the earth, and we too. For each remains healthy in his chaos, in the others he dies. Therefore, you must not be astonished about things that seem incredible to us. To God, everything is possible. He has created all things for us, and according to our thoughts and intelligence, but above our thoughts and intelligence. for he wants to be looked upon as a God who is marvelous in his creations. Had nothing been created but merely what is possible for men to believe, God would be all too weak, and man would be his equal. This is why he has created things as a God, and let men marvel about them, and let his works be so big that no one can marvel enough about these beings also. God wants to have it thus. Let us philosophize further about their food. Know that each chaos has its two spheres, the heaven and the soil, just as we men walk on earth. Earth and heaven give us our food, and the chaos is in between the two. Thus we are nourished in between the two spheres and the globules. Thus also those who live in the water have the earth at the bottom, and the water as chaos, and the heaven down to the water, and so they are in between heaven and earth, and the water is their chaos, and their abode is according to their kind. Thus also with the gnomes, whose soil is water, and whose chaos is terra, and the heaven is their sphere, that is, the earth stands in water. To them the earth is chaos, and the water the soil. Food grows to them in such a way. The Sylphs are like men, nourish themselves like men in the wilderness, on herbs in the woods. To the Salamanders the soil is earth, their heaven is the air, and fire their chaos. Thus food grows to them from the earth and from fire, and the constellation from air is their heaven. Now about the things they eat and drink you may understand so much. Water quenches our thirst, but not that of the gnomes, nor of the nymphs, nor of the other two. Further, if water has been created for us to quench our thirst, then another water must have been created for them that we cannot see nor explore. Drink they must, but drink that which is in their abode is a drink. Eat they must similarly according to the content of their world. One cannot find out more about these things, but only that their world has its own nature, just as ours has. About their clothing. They are clothed and cover their genitalia, but not in the way of our world, in their own way, for they have modesty and similar qualities as men must have law and similar institutions, have their authorities, like the ants, which have their king, and the wild geese, which have their leader, not according to the law of men, but according to their inborn nature. The animals have their chief, and so they have two, and more than all animals, because they're most similar to man. God has clothed all beings and endowed them with modesty to walk and stand before men. To the beasts, clothing is inborn by nature, but not to these people. To them, nothing is inborn by nature. They must work for it like men whom they resemble. Their work, like men's work, is in the nature and kind of their own world and earth on which they live. For he who gave us wool from sheep gives it to them also, for it is possible for God to create not only the sheep which are known to us, but also the same in fire, in water, and in the earth. For he clothes not only us, but also the gnomes, the nymphs, the salamanders, and the sylvesters. They are all under the protection of God and are all clothed and guided by him. For God has not only power to provide for men, but also for anything else, of which man knows nothing, and of which he becomes slowly aware. And when he sees and hears something, it is a miracle to him that bears no fruit. That is, he gives it no further thought, but remains obstinate and blind, like one who has good eyes, but has no grace to see. About their day, night, and sleeping and walking, know that they rest, sleep, and are awake like men, that is, in the same measure as men. With that, they have the sun and firmament as well as we, that is, the mountain people have the earth, which is their chaos. To them, it is only in air and no earth as we have it. From this, we must conclude that they see through earth as we do through the air, and then the sun shines to them through the earth as it does to us through the air, and that they have the sun, the moon, and the whole firmament in front of their eyes, as we men. To the Undines, the water is their chaos, and the water does not keep them from the sun, and just as we have the sun through the air, they have it through the water in the same measure. Thus also to the Vulcans through the fire, and in the same way as the sun shines on us and fertilizes the earth, know that the same happens to them as to us. The consequence is that they too have summer, winter, day and night, etc., but they do not need a rain, snow, etc. They have it in a different way than we. These are the great miracles of God. From all this, we must conclude that they have pestilence, fevers, diseases, and all kinds of ills of the heaven, just as we do, and that they follow us in all these matters, since they are men, but in the judgment of God, in the resurrection, they will be beasts and not men. About their figures, know that they're different. The water people look like men, both women and men. The Sylvesters do not conform, but are cruder, coarser, longer, and stronger than both. The mountain people are small, of about 2 spans. The salamanders are long, narrow, and lean. Their place and abode are in their chaos, as we mentioned before. The nymphs live in water, in running brooks, etc., so close that they grasp the people who ride through or bathe herein. The mountain people are in the mountain chaos, and they only build their houses there. This is why it often happens that one finds in the earth an attic or vaults and similar structures of the height of about a yard. They have been built by these people, by the mountain people, for their abode and dwellings. The water people do the same in their various places. Know also that the mountain people live in the caves of the mountains, and this is why strange structures occur and are found in such places. These are their work. Know also about the fire people, whose yelling, hammering, and working can be heard in volcanic mountains. It can also be heard when the elements are incinerated, for all these things are the same as with us, but according to their secret quality. Those who travel through wild regions learn the reason for such beings and obtain information. These things are found in the mines also, close to good ore, etc. They're found and in the waters also, and in the volcanoes near the Etna. And there are many more marvelous things about their coins, payments, and customs, which would be too long in this connection, but will be described in their place. What follows is chapter 3: how they come to us, how do they become visible to us.